The other agroforestry practice that I've relied quite heavily on is silvopasture, where you're managing both livestock and woody crops at the same time. It's not turning your cattle loose in your woodlot and not managing for forage. It's managing for the forage and for the trees and for the animals. And so here I've got quite a few oaks, 60 foot on center, because I want to have these big, huge, gigantic open grown oaks in my oak savanna eventually. And then most of the shrubs that you see are hazelnut. This particular spot right here is walnut. And this spot right there to this day has had zero equipment in it at all. It's only been managed by grazing animals, uh, cattle periodically, but mostly the pigs. And what you'll see here on the right is a beautiful mulberry, little mulberry tree. The Russian white mulberry is now illegal in the state of Wisconsin because it's invasive. Well, it's a super high protein berry. For a fruit, it's like 4% protein, which is, you know, off the charts. The leaves are more nutritious than alfalfa hay. You cut it down, it sprouts back. If you've got a really good producer like this one, you can cut a stick off and you shove it in the ground and it roots. It's like, why would we make that illegal? This is an amazing miracle wonder plant. And when the mulberries start to produce out here, starting around, oh, say 4th of July, and then going till September, when the mulberries are on the trees, the pigs are under the mulberry trees. They got purple noses, they got purple rear ends. They're happy, happy, happy pigs. Of course, most people have seen pictures of my Jurassic chickens. Also have Jurassic guineas, and they kind of run around. And some years the guineas come back and there's more of them than there were in the spring. Other times they come back and there's less of them than there were in the spring. This year we've had an interesting phenomena in that we've had a Cooper's hawk that's learned. Now the hazelbrush, you know, the chickens are kind of a jungle edge fowl, a shrubland kind of fowl, and the hazelnuts provide them with extra feed. You know, there's all kinds of bugs in there. They eat the nuts when the nuts are within reach. All kinds of bugs in the ground. They love to scratch in the duff underneath, and it gives them protection from aerial predators most of the time. This past year, we've had a Cooper's hawk. We call him Bradley. It's Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper has been annihilating our chickens, and it's just been really interesting watching it happen. And the guineas have really gotten wise to Bradley. Now the chickens are starting to pay more attention to the guineas, but they still haven't quite figured it out yet. And I'm wondering, you know, if we're going to make it through the summer with more or less chickens. We'll find out. So stay tuned. With enough cover, you don't lose all your chickens. You know, people say, well, don't you have a problem with predators? It's like, well, yeah, not with the smart chickens. And you look at those chickens. Are those stupid looking chickens? Those are not timid little barnyard hens. Those are Jurassic chickens. They're I can say badass, can I? Yeah, so, and of course, my favorites, of course, are the piggies. Every year I've had anywhere between half dozen and 50 hogs. I do them seasonally. I work with some growers who are producers for Nyman Ranch, and they target a July delivery because they get a pay price premium in that. So they'll farrow in February. By the time May rolls around, they'll know if the pig's going to make weight, and if the pig is undersized, I get all their undersized pigs. So for me, it's an advantage because it's a little bit bigger than a 30-pound feeder pig. And for them, it's an advantage because they can't sell these pigs anyways because their contract is for feeder pigs in July that are 250 pounds. So it works out pretty well for both of us. I put rings in their nose so they don't plow up the pasture, because the grass is absolutely important when it comes to pumping, you know, liquid carbon into the soil for fertility, and it's critically important for the cattle to be grazing. And of course, there's a whole erosion potential. And the pig's diet is probably the majority of it is grass, every day they get enough of a ration. They get about a cup and a half per pig of a feed ration that's locally grown, organic. Um, it's enough to keep a 30-pound pig alive, but it's not enough to make them grow. So they have to get whatever they need in order to grow. They get it from their environment. So from the grass, then their first woody crops that they get are currants, and then raspberries. Then the mulberries start kicking in. Then partway through the mulberries, we'll get early apples, cherries. Then hazelnuts start kicking in August, and they'll get, not only will they get hazelnuts from the bushes that are in their paddock, they'll get all the cleaning waste when I'm processing, when I'm husking the hazels to get ready to ship to market. And then the oaks will be like, late August into September, and then the chestnuts start in September and they go into October, and they finish on apples and chestnuts. And they'll get up to about full size in, by mid-September, but they're lean. You can see these are not fat pigs. But then once the chestnuts start falling, they just plump right up, and it's a really nice. It's a fairly unsaturated fat. It'll be about a third oil, and then 2/3 like saturated fat. And so the stuff that's on top, I call it pig oil. But if you've ever been cooking in the morning, you just reach over and the spoon is stuck in the bacon grease. Those of you guys who are meat eating slobs and all that, and you can't get it out. And then you're trying to whack it off the spoon and all that. You don't want to like push it off with your finger because it's gross. You just grab the pig oil and go in the pan. It's just fine. So there's my piggers. I don't know why. Oh, okay. So this is like how back to succession again, how things would have been in the early years with the fruit. This is not an orchard. Underneath the trees when they were first planted, you can see this has been newly grafted. There was a border of comfrey, then a band of Jerusalem artichoke, and then underneath in this particular row is a lot of alliums, a lot of chives, a lot of garlic. I just was up there a couple days ago, and this whole spot is just a like 4-foot wide swath of garlic. Who would have thought that after 25 years, garlic would have outcompeted Jerusalem artichokes? And then growing my grains, obviously, this is rye. You can see in here the comfrey. There's also irises underneath there. It's basically a jungle mess. And since 1995, I'd sprayed 0 sprays on my fruit. I've sprayed 0, pest or disease control sprays anyways on either my organic produce or my fruit. I'm going to grow a large quantity of whatever it is, and I'll sell the perfect stuff. And the things that are flawed, the pigs get to clean it up. And if you look at the fruit on that tree, I've already gotten out of this exact spot. I would have gotten mushrooms in the spring. I would have got daffodils. Well, the daffodils bloom about 3 weeks before the apples. So the first wild pollinators are in there and they're multiplying. It takes them conveniently 3 weeks to have their second generation raised. Now you get your second generation of pollinators right in your apples when they're blooming. So after the daffodils come the irises. There have been mushrooms in the ground. So there's 5 crops already, and it's not even spring yet. And then finally the apples bloom. Well, then of course there's honey and wax that come out of that. Then through the early part of the summer, I'll put the pigs in there to catch the June drop. So there's 7 crops already, and we have yet to harvest an apple. Then come fall, we have to have the period of time when the pigs are not in there. I'll mow once before harvest to make it convenient to walk in there. I'll go through, pick the low-hanging fruit, put them in bins, and then I leave the stuff up top for the pigs to get, and then I'll turn the pigs loose. They graze all through it, and I send the cattle out there, and they trample graze, and it's just a really beautiful system. And that's kind of what it looks like. It's just a wild, woolly, 0 spray jungle orchard. And there's the cattle. For people who say, oh, you can't put cattle out in your trees, they'll mess it up. Notice there are no branches down low on the apple trees. That's perfect, because now I'm not going to have a lot of apple scab that propagates up through the tree, because apple scab is splashed from leaves and spores on the ground, and it goes up. And if it finds a leaf, a drop can hit it and it can splash, just climb right up the tree. But it only can splash up about 3 feet. And if you prune the lower 3 feet of your this is 5 feet here. You take the lower 5 feet off your apple trees, virtually zero apple scab. And obviously there's some grains in there. That'll all get trampled in and it'll resprout for next spring.